connecting to your Gmail, you can have access to your mails, even which has been sent or received 2 years or 3 years or 5 years back. So how come it is getting stored, irrespective of the time? Even after 5 or 10 years, you can retrieve your mails because that is getting stored in a database, and we call that as a cloud storage there. And similarly, whenever you are connecting with the website or a web project, the data will be accumulated in one place, and that data can be accessible throughout the world. And it has such a sophistication, and we can do that with the help of the databases, what we are going to discuss it today. So we are going to discuss about the databases which is connected with PHP. There are many databases which exist in this world. We can say Oracle, we can say FoxPro, DB2, and even cloud storage, Postgres is there. But as far as database is concerned, our lecture is confined only for MySQL. So MySQL is one of the databases what we are going to discuss today. And this database is called as open source. So there are two types of databases. One is called as open source databases, and another is called as proprietary databases. So two databases are much popular in this world. One is called as Oracle. That is called as a proprietary database. That means if you want to use this database, you have to pay a certain amount for Oracle company, and then you have to get that software version of it. So that it is not freely downloadable as far as Oracle is concerned. But that is called as a proprietary database. You have to pay it, and you have to get the license. You have to use it. And another thing is called as open source databases. Open source databases, you can download it free of cost. All you want to know the URL of a website. To go to the URL, just download that database. You can install in your system, and you can directly use it. This also requires a license, but that license is called as general public license. So it comes along with the software itself. As soon as you download the software, that GPL, this is called shortly called as GPL license, general public license. So that comes along with the database itself, and you are free to use that. Okay, so open source means you can freely use, you can freely modify. So no proprietary license or anything is required. No need to pay anything. So MySQL comes under that category called as open source. It comes under the category called as open source. Okay, now we'll discuss about what is meant by MySQL. So MySQL is exclusively meant for connecting with web-related projects. So it can be also connected with standalone. You can use your Java programming and you can connect with MySQL. But MySQL is highly popular because of this web-related projects. Throughout the world, nearly 70 to 75% of the projects are using this MySQL as a backbone. So later I will tell you how to just secure this MySQL, how to back up all these things. Okay, but MySQL is freely downloadable. It is also reliable, and all the databases in this world use a common language for database that is called a structured query language. Whatever the database use, we follow a language. For example, to retrieve a data from database, you used to use a command called a select star from the table name. So that select star from table name is called as a SQL language. It is called a structured query language. And it is freely distributable, and it is actually it is free to download. So what is meant by freely distributable? Say for example, if I have a MySQL database here in my machine, I can compress it. I can just save it as a text file, and I can just load it in a different machine so that I can export all my data to a different machine. So this is called as distributable, and you can just connect it together. That is the advantage of this MySQL database. And we all know that SQL is called as a standard structured query language. So it compiles in, it is an open source as well as it is called as portable. That means platform independent. It can execute in different platforms. For example, you can use MySQL in Windows. You can use it in Linux. You can use it in Solaris operating system. You can use in Mac OS, all these things. So multiple operating systems, you can use this MySQL. So this platform independent database. So this is all about, so highly reliable. It's a major important thing is it is reliable. It is free of cost. You can download it, and the size is also very small, so that portable. All these features, very rich features, are incorporated inside this MySQL database. Okay, and now as far as MySQL is concerned, there are two types of technologies which we use to connect with the MySQL. PHP uses two types of technologies to connect with MySQL. So the first technology is called as mysqli. MySQL is called as an improved extension. So when I learned PHP, actually this I was not there. Later in the subsequent versions of PHP, this I has been incorporated, adding much more features and rich features inside MySQL and PHP. So MySQL I is the latest version for connecting with PHP. And this PDO is called as PHP Data Objects. But there are two types of connectivity. Either you can use mysqli extension or PDO extension to connect with PHP. But the beauty part of this is you can use this technology, but which is the best one? When anyone you call, there are two types of technologies here to connect with a common database called as MySQL. Which is the best one? The question always arises like that. Okay, in my perspective, I can say that PDO is the best one. Okay, so why PDO? Why PHP Data Objects? Why not mysqli extension? So I said that there is not a single database in this world. You can learn about Oracle is there, MySQL is there, FoxPro is there, DB2 is there. So many databases, Postgres is there, even cloud storage database is there. But if you want to connect with all the databases, that's a generalized version called as PDO. So using PDO, you can connect with all these databases. So PDO is designed in such a portable way where you can connect with so many databases at a time. But when MySQL is concerned, as far as MySQL is concerned, it can only connect with MySQL database. Okay, so if you take up this MySQL database, MySQL extension, and if I try to connect with Oracle, of course that is not possible. So there is a serious limitation in using MySQL. So according to these two technologies or two types of connectivities, the best one is called as PDO. So we will also be learning about MySQL extension and PDO. But as programming is concerned, MySQL actually is simple to program, as PDO have a little bit complicated structures. That's all. Okay, but MySQL is very simple to program. So since we are going to connect only with MySQL, we will prefer this both, and I will explain you how to connect with databases today. Okay, now as far as PHP and MySQL is concerned, there are two types of technologies, but MySQL itself is having two versions. One is called as object-oriented version. So whatever the data use, that will be considered as an object here. And another is called as procedural version. So MySQL have both object-oriented and procedural. So we'll also learn about object-oriented and procedural. And the third is called as PDO. Okay. So before going into the database, okay, you should know how to access this database. Listen carefully. Now, I just check it out whether my version is started here. Yes, my WAM server is started here. Now, I go to my Internet Explorer. So I use a browser called as Internet Explorer here. Now, I just click localhost. I type localhost. So how to go for MySQL database here? Now MySQL is having two types of databases. That is, name is actually, one is called as MariaDB, another is called as MySQL. So MySQL is called as an official name, whereas MariaDB is called as a commercial name. So MariaDB is a commercial name which is given for MySQL. So both are same. Now listen here, you have this WAM server page over here. In this WAM server, there is a link called as PHP MyAdmin. Are you able to see this? Are you able to see this? PHP MyAdmin?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when I click this PHP MyAdmin, so it goes to a page. Actually, this is the latest version of PHP MyAdmin page. And you can see that the username and password will be left as blank here. Okay, it will be always left as blank. But by the default username, you have to type it as root user. ROOT is called as a username. The default username for PHP myadmin is root user. Okay, and password is blank password. So later I will tell you how to establish your own usernames and password here. Just now we are going to log in as a default user and we are going to get inside this MySQL server here. Now root and leave this password as blank and just go, click go. Now you will have a interface, MySQL interface, a web interface here, and you can see here server is actually my localhost server, and the name given for this DB is called as MariaDB, and it runs inside the port called as 3306. So 3306 is a default port number where MySQL executes. Okay, so if you want to have any application program, that has to choose a specific port number. For example, all your email will use port number 25. Okay, if you want to send or receive a file, that will use a port number called as 23, and your HTTP protocol uses a port number 80. Okay, so these are the specific port numbers where every application program used to use. But as far as MySQL is concerned, it uses a port number 3306. So what is the range of the ports? What is the range of the ports? So you can use a port number from 1 to 65,535. So that is the range. So 1 to 65,535 is the range of the port. So within this, all the application programs you can be operating in any ports here. Okay, so but MySQL operates in the port number 3306. So this is the default port. Later you can also change this, but whenever you install, it automatically runs in this port. Okay, now what you see here on the left side is called as the various databases. So database is different from the table what you see. Okay, database can have collection of tables. So you can say that database is type of if I want to have a database called as SKCT, yes, in SKCT I can have any tables here. I can have a table about the third IT. I can have a table about the final year, table about final year mechanical, anything I can have. But all tables will be under one database called as SKCT. So a database can have any tables. So operate with the database, first you have to create a database. Okay, MySQL is called as a database here, and inside the database you have to create a common database name for it. So what is this name? And I just click it here. Now you see on the right left side ITDB has been created. Okay, now you can create a table. So as I said that IT database can have any tables here, any number of tables. Now I create one table called the student here. Student is the table name. Okay, so how many columns a student require? Say for example, I require two columns. Say for example, first column is the student name and second column is called as register number. Now I just go here, IT data. Okay. Okay, now that was erased over here. So I create a name called a student table, and the number of columns required is 2 columns. Now when I put 2 and just I click this button called as go. Now you can see here a beautiful web interface has been set up, and this actually gives you the name and columns of. So I actually ordered only for 2 columns. So what is the first column? I said it is student name. Student name should be the first column, and obviously student name, what should be the data type of it? Student name should be a varchar data type. Varchar, it is called as variable character. So why I am giving variable character? Say for example, your student can have 10 characters or 20 characters or 30 characters. Okay, some people might be having a name length of even 15 characters. Some will be having the name length of only 6. Okay, so I should fix up this character. So what I'm doing is I make a default character as maximum as 40 characters. So the first column is called as the name of the field here. The second column is called as the data type of the field. The data type is called as varchar here. And what is the length of this column? So 40 columns. So if I put varchar, what will happen? Say for example, I said that there can be maximum of 40 characters here. But what will happen if I just use only 10 columns as a name? So remaining 30 columns or 30 spaces will be reserved for future use. Okay, so if I directly use char over here, then that 30 spaces will get wasted. If I use varchar, that remaining spaces will be used for further usage. Okay, so that will be reserved for further usage. So to make the memory efficient, we are using the data type called as var character here. So I used length equal to 40. So the next is called as register number. So register number need not be int here because our register number will be having 18 EUIT 001002 like that. Okay, so to do that, what I have to do, again I have to use the data type called as var character, and I use the register number maximum characters 15 characters. Once I save this, now I said that there are two columns over here. In two columns I have named, the first column is student name, second column is register number, and both belongs to var character type. Length is 40 and 15. You can give any length here. Now I just give save here. Now you can see here inside database called as IT database, I have a table called as student here. Now if we click the student, you can see the structure here. You can see the structure. The first column name is student name, second column is called as register number. Okay, so you can create your own table inside the database. Similarly, you can create any number of tables inside this database ITB. Okay, so I have created only one table over here. Similarly, you can create n number of tables here. If you want to create another table, just click this new over here, and number of columns it is given as 4 here, and listen carefully. So I create a column called as college name. So varchar, length is 40. And the next is college ID. College ID is integer ID. So integer, let us have 5 characters here. And the third one is location. Location, again it is called as varchar. And location, let us say that we have 30 locations, 30 spaces reserved for location. And the last one is pin code. Pin code, so obviously pin code should be an integer one, so pin code maximum you can have 6 characters. Okay, so I save this file. I should give the name of this table name. So top table name is on the top, so I give college details underscore details. Okay, so you can give like this. Now you click save here. Now you can see here in my IT database, I have 2 tables. One is college details and another is called as student here. So what you have seen so far is how to create a database and how to create a table inside a database. So that's what we have discussed so far. Okay. So any doubts in this? How to log in inside MySQL server, how to create a database, how to create a table? Any doubts in this? So all these features, all SQL features are given in the form of interfaces. So there is no need to write a query directly. You can just click insert, you can just click delete. So interfaces are given. So not much SQL knowledge is required. But when you try to code it from PHP, at the time you require SQL knowledge. So you cannot wash off your hands from SQL knowledge. Okay. So even though interface is given, so without SQL knowledge, well portal cannot be designed. Okay. Now this is what I want to tell you. So now I go to that what is called as PHP and MySQL. So far you have discussed about how to create a database, how to create a table, all these things. Now the first method is called as open MySQL connection. So MySQLi object oriented. Now I'm going to use MySQLi object oriented technique here. So there are 2 types of techniques: MySQLi object oriented as well as MySQLi procedure oriented. Okay. Now the first thing, these are all this is not mandatory. So I have given 3 names called as server name, username, and password. There's no need to declare this kind of variables. You can directly pass the variables as you want here. I will show you also. Now listen here. First, now to create a connection, first you have to create a connection with the database, because PHP is a different software, whereas MySQL is a different software. Okay, PHP is called as a middleware technology, whereas MySQL is called as a backend. So you have to establish a connection between the front end and back end. So first, how to establish a connection? That makes the difference here. So to create a connection, now use this variable called as not any variable you can use. You can, for the sake of understanding, I'm using $CON. Is called as connection variable, and use this keyword called as new. New means connection will be created as an object here, since this is object oriented technology. And I use the class called as mysqli, which is an inbuilt class, and I pass 3 parameters here. Okay, so there is also 4 parameters can pass, but I will tell you how to pass that. Now, for the sake of understanding, you can pass 3 parameters. First is called as where your MySQL server is running. For example, as far as this subject is concerned, I am running my MySQL and PHP on the same machine. That means it runs on my local machine. So server name will be a local host here. Okay, say for example, if my PHP MySQL is installed in a different machine, then instead of localhost, I have to give that IP address name over here. IP address will be given over here instead of server name. The second parameter is called as username. So what is the default username for MySQL? My default username for MySQL is called as root, and password. I don't have a password for MySQL. Okay, so that's what. Once the connection is established, you will get a positive connection. So if connection is failed, this connect error will result in true here. So connect error is a method which actually tell you if there is any error, it will just tell you a message called as connect error. And die is actually a function. It's just like echo function, but die actually gives you error kind of messages in a different font size. Okay, so die means it is exclusively used to point out the error here. Die connection failed, and you will get what is the connect error over here. So dollar connection connect error will give you what kind of error has been occurred while you try to establish a connection over here. So if this connect error is false, now this information will not get executed, and actually it will come out, and you will get the message called as connect successfully here. But as far as this code is concerned, it should be given in else format over here, but I have not given in else format. So even if the connection is failed here, it will give me the statement called as connected successfully. Okay, so we will just go to that. I will tell you how to connect a page, a PHP with a SQL over here, PHP to MySQL server over here. Okay. Now, this is all about PHP. So what I said is, first you just give connection. Okay. So connection is the name of the variable where I try to create a connection established here. Now I said that this belongs to a category called as object oriented. So simply type new. Then you type mysqli. So what is the first parameter over here? The first parameter is called as a server name. So what is the server name here? You can see here the server name is called as localhost here. So simply you type localhost. So inside the quotes you type localhost. Okay. So what is the next parameter I have said? The next parameter is called as the username here, the username of the database. So the default username of the database is called as root here. Okay, and I don't have a password. So simply ignore that password is not, so simply leave it as blank here, just like close here. It's called as connection. Okay, so once if the connection is established successfully, it won't give you any connect error over here. Now I'll check whether it will give you any connect error here. So connection, and put an arrow mark here, connect underscore error. If this is true, then I just write die connection error. I put a colon here. I put a dot, then I have to point out what is the error here. So connection $CON hyphen connect error. The first thing what you have to do is you have to identify whether the connection has been established successfully. So if this connect error is true, obviously there is an error in connection, so you cannot establish the connection, so that you cannot connect with the database. Now the next one is else. Echo, I gave a message called as connection established successfully. Connection established successfully. So now I'm not using any variables. I'm directly writing the server name and username here, and then I'm writing the password. I don't have password, so I left it as blank. So now I save this. If my connection is right, obviously I should get that connection successfully established. Okay, now I'm just getting the message called as connection established successfully. Now listen carefully. If I try to mention a wrong server here, so what will happen? So instead of localhost, I try to establish it's local here. There is not any server called as local here. Yes. Now it is throwing me an error because there's not any server called as local here. Obviously, the internal libraries take up the responsibility of this inefficient code and just throw me an error that this is not possible. Okay, that's about how to establish a connection with the help of MySQL. Now listen here. I said that there are only 3 parameters. Now I just give here localhost. What will happen if I just wrongly type a username? Okay, so I don't have a username called Siva in my system. So root is the username by default MySQL. So what will happen if I give this also? Okay. Listen carefully. And now, what is the database I have created? I have created a database called as ITB is my database. So practically there is not any database called as welcome database. So fourth parameter, I can give the database over here. So in my slide, I have only used 3 parameters here. Fourth parameter, I'm using a database name here. So database name is called as welcome, but I don't have any database called as welcome here. You can just check it out. So whether any database called as welcome over here, I have ITB, I have information schema, MySQL is there, performance schema, SKCT library is there, test is there. Apart from that, no other database exists. Now, I just try to connect with the wrong database. What will happen? Just see here. I try to connect with the wrong database. Now you can see here, there is not an unknown database called as welcome here. Okay, that means my connection is working perfectly. I try to connect, connection is established, but I try to connect to a database which is not existing over here. So it will throw me an error. Now listen carefully. I try to connect a database which is already existing. So what is the database already existing? ITDB is a database which is already existing here. So I give the fourth parameter as my database here. Now I try to connect. Yes, obviously it is getting connected successfully. Okay. So for connection establishment, first you have to give here what is the server you are trying to connect, what is the proper username and password you are trying to connect, and what is the proper database you want to connect. Okay, so once you connect, establish a connection to the database, then you can have access to multiple tables which is located inside the database. Okay. Any doubts in this? Any doubts in this code? Do you have? Any doubts in this code? Mayappan?
No, sir.
Pavitra?
Sir, she is not here, sir.
Yes, ma. Yes, Muthubarthi, tell me, ma.
Pavitra is not here, sir.
Okay, ma. Okay. Okay, object SQL object oriented. Okay, this is called as MySQL object oriented, and this is one type of connection establishment. And I will next tell you how to connect to this MySQL with the help of procedural oriented. Now listen here, this is called as procedural oriented connection. So what is procedural oriented connection? So I'm not using any new structure here, and I'm not using any arrows here to represent a data structure here. So I can directly use a statement here, mysqli underscore connect. As far as object oriented is concerned, you have to use new of mysqli. But whenever you are trying to connect with procedural oriented technology, then you have to use mysqli underscore connect. Procedural oriented is simple to program. Okay, so not efficient, not complicated programming structures are connected to this. It's very simple. So this also consists of 3 or 4 parameters. Yes, Mohandan, do you have any doubts?
So what is mean by procedure and objects, sir?
Okay, object and procedural oriented, the difference between the language called as C and C++. So when you say that C is called as procedural oriented, it means that the templates or the data structures what you use in C cannot be reused. Once you program it, you cannot reuse it. But whenever you say about object oriented, once you build an object, and that object can be subsequently used that. So that is the difference between procedural and object oriented. For example, Pascal is a procedural oriented language. COBOL is a procedural oriented language. C is also called as a procedural oriented language. Okay, so the components which are used or the programming structures you used in C cannot be reused. Again and again, you have to reprogram. But once if you develop an object-oriented program or technology, that component can be reused. For example, I can connect this, and I have to use this connection only in this program. But I can establish a function, and that connection can be used in a different file or a different system over there. So that is the difference between object-oriented and procedural. Object-oriented means all the data can be bundled inside a single concept. Okay, but this is not like that. Mundan, are you able to get it?
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Okay. Now, mysql underscore connect. I have 3 parameters. So similarly, this can be used as 3 parameters or 4 parameters. 4th parameter should be a database here. Okay. I will show you how to establish a connection here using procedural oriented. Listen carefully. So I just have connection here. I hope this is able to you are able to visualize this. MySQL underscore connect. Okay, the first parameter is called as the name of the server. So name of the server is called as localhost. By default, it is called as localhost because you are going to run in your own machine. So the second parameter is called as the username. So username is called as root here, and the third one is called as a password. So I don't have a password, and just I will close here. Okay. Now, if this connection is established here, obviously this will result in true here. Okay. If connection is established well, this connection will return true. I will show you echo connection. Okay, if this is true, then obviously it will just give me the value called as 1 over here. Now I don't have any error in my code. You can see here line number 3, MySQLi could not be converted to string. Let's check it out. Okay. Okay, so then that is returning a string value over here. You are getting an error here. So I will check it out. Listen here. If it is true, if the connection is not established here, if not connection, that means if connection is established as true here, then if results in false. If connection is not established, obviously I should throw an error message that echo connection not established. Connection not established. So if the connection is established, then I just throw it echo connection established successfully. first thing you have to ensure whether the connection is established successfully or not. Now you might be writing a single PHP script of 300 or 350 lines. So it is hard to identify at what point or which error has occurred. Okay, so first you have to identify whether the connection has been established successfully, and you can use some metrics to fix it up whether it has been established or not. Now I just show you. Now I can say that the connection has been established successfully. Obviously, there is not any error in my connection. So what I try to do is here, now I just give some other name. I'm not giving ITB, I just give welcome over here. Again, I will get an same error, but in this case, I will say that connection not established successfully, not established. You will get this message. Now see here, because I established a connection which is existing in your wrong database. So connection not established. So unknown database called as welcome, that does not exist. Okay, so this process is called as procedural oriented process. So always the fourth parameter should be the database name where you want to connect with your data. Okay, but you can always throw an error which is connected to this. Whenever error occurs, you can just make a condition to check whether error occurs or not. So these are the way how to establish a connection. So either use procedural oriented of MySQLi or object oriented of MySQLi if your database is only MySQL. Okay, but there is also other way. So say for example, I don't want to connect my PHP to MySQL, but I want to connect to Oracle. At the time, I cannot use MySQLi Connect or MySQLi. Both is not possible at that time. So in that case, I have to use PDO, that is PHP Data Objects. Okay, so this is the second method for establishing a connection with PHP. You can opt for any method, which is very convenient to you. Okay. Now the third one is called as how to open a connection to PHP data objects. Okay, using PHP data object. So slightly complicated one when compared to the other structures, because you have to use try catch block everything here. Okay, now see here, this open connection. First, I use a PDO. PDO is called as PHP Data Objects, and I use MySQL. Inside that, I have a parameter called as host here. So host is nothing but your server name. Okay, host equal to, if you have a local host as your server, so you have to give host equal to server name over here. And after that, I put a semicolon over here, DB name. DB name is called as database name. So I have used MyDB over here, but instead of MyDB, you have to use here ITDB here, because I have ITDB over here. And next one is called as a set attribute. This is called as various error modes which is connected with PDO. Okay. So not mandatorily, but the good programming practices, you have to use the set attribute function over here. It will just highlight if there is any error, just it will just throw the error to PHP server, whereas Apache will take care of this server handling over here. Now, how to connect this PHP, okay, to a PDO over here. Now listen carefully. You can use the same structure. Okay. Now PDO can connect with PHP as well as other databases. That is very important. Okay. Now to strike it out, use it. I'm using a try catch block, so you can use try catch block to run it. Now I use $CON equal to new of PDO. PDO is not small letters. PDO is capital letter, because PDO is an inbuilt class of PHP. Okay, it's very important. PDO is called as an inbuilt class of PHP. Now, just go over here. So I want to connect with MySQL. So since it's called as driver name, so when I want to connect with MySQL, I have to represent MySQL. When I want to connect with Oracle, instead of MySQL, that should be Oracle. When I want to connect with FoxPro, instead of MySQL, that should be FoxPro. So it should take up that value. So host. So host. And after this host, I have to give the name of the server. The name of the server is called as localhost here. So localhost. Okay. Now the DB name, I just give my name called as ITDB. Okay. So ITDB. So close this thing. The next one is called as username. Username is called as root here, and the password is colon. Okay. Now you can establish attribute here. Attribute is con and use set attribute. So it's not mandatory, but it's a very good programming practice to use that. Okay, attribute you have to use it, and the first attribute is PDO colon attribute error mode here. PDO error mode here. Attribute error mode. Error mode here. Attribute error mode, and you have another parameter called as PDO colon attribute, and that mode not mandatory, but you have to better way of using it is help you to do the program better. So error mode, exception. Okay, so this is the second idea behind this. The last one is you have to ensure whether it is connected or not. Just give echo connected successfully. And if it is not connected successfully, if there is some line over here, immediately it will come to a catch block here. So catch block, you can use either exception or PDO exception. You can directly use exception because exception is a super class for this PDO exception, but I use $s over here. Any variable you can use here. Okay, now use echo and just connection failed. Can use this connection failed over here. So if you want to know for what reasons connection is not established, then you can use this $s and you put get message over here. So obviously you will get the error for what reason the connection is not established over here. So now this mechanism is called as PDO mechanism for connecting with PHP database. Okay. So this is a mechanism here. So either you can use MySQLi data structure or PDO data structure. So today what we are going to discuss is error mode exception class constant. So some error which is related to error mode. Okay. Spelled it is wrong. Now you can see here connection is established successfully. So similarly, you can do the fourth parameter. You can give the name of the database here. So name of the database, as usual, I can give IP DB over here. But it is not needed since it is already mentioned here itself, DB name. Okay, you can give DB name, but suppose if I give a wrong database called as welcome over here, what will happen? So obviously it will throw me an error message that connection failed. The reason for this is I have given a wrong database here where you cannot connect with it. Okay, so that's all about how to establish a connection with the database. Today I am not pushing any data inside the database. I have said you how to connect with the database. Obviously we have discussed three methods. Either use MySQLi procedural oriented or object oriented, or the third one you can use PDO. So whichever method is best for you to connect with the database, you can use that method. Okay, that's all I want to say. But before winding up the class, suppose I put up a question. I want to connect with the database called as Postgres database. So in these three technologies, which technology will you use?
Sir, PDO, sir.
PDO is the database. Okay. Okay. So I don't want to make any complicated coding structures to connect with my database. So what is the technology will you use if I don't want any complicated structures in programming?
Sir, procedural, sir.
Procedural means whether I have to use mysqli or mysqli underscore connect.
Sir, mysqli underscore connect.
Exactly, Pa. Exactly. Okay. So this is what I have to say that so far what we have done is we know how to use file as a database. We have used both text files as well as Excel files. You know how to write inside an Excel file, how to read an Excel file. I have already said how to create an Excel file as a database, use an Excel file as a database. Last we have done a mini project on that, a small mini project in the class. Okay, so now hereafter we'll be using the directly connecting with the database and we'll be fetching the records like that. So once if you learn the database, finally you can do a project which is related to PHP. Okay, do you have any questions at the moment? Moonman, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Naresh, do you have any questions, Naresh? Okay. So if no questions are there, we'll wind up the session. Thank you and Jai Hind. Bye.